Alrighty, welcome back to the Detroit Lions channel. We have some breaking news, a little bit of breaking news yesterday morning, a little bit late to it, but I still wanted to give my reaction and still wanted to talk about it. The Detroit Lions signed Zach Cunningham, the former Houston Texans standout linebacker, a player that over the last couple of years has been more of a journeyman, been with 3 teams over the last 3 years, took a bit of a back seat on the Denver Broncos defense a season ago, but is going to come in to really be a Detroit Lions bottom of the depth chart type of player in a very similar way to Roy Lopez, to Avonte Maddox, to Rock Ya-Sin, to, some of the other players that have been brought in that are good players that are former starters, but probably aren't the best starters anymore. I think that's the mold that Zach Cunningham is going to play for the Detroit Lions. The 8-year NFL veteran has spent a lot of time in Houston, a lot of time in Tennessee, and then his last 2 years as a Philadelphia Eagle and a Denver Bronco. His career has been phenomenal with over 700 tackles, 31 tackles for loss, 5 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, 23 passes defended, and an interception to his name. He has been one of, I think, the more underrated linebackers of his generation. There were a couple seasons ago where he had over 160 tackles on the year. He's been really good. He's been a really solid piece for the Houston Texans defense, was a really solid piece of the Tennessee Titans defense for a number of years. And again, even though last season he took a step back, in 2023, he was still playing at a pretty high level. With the Philadelphia Eagles, he had 85 tackles, 2 TFLs, a forced fumble, and 4 passes defended, and was by no means a bad football player for the Eagles. The style of linebacker he plays, a big off-ball guy. He's limited as a pass rusher, although in Houston he did average 2.5 sacks per season. He's more of a run and chase, tackle machine, kind of just a big-bodied linebacker that can, get some range and get sideline to sideline, but, is more of a in-between the tackles, kind of bone-crushing hitter type of player. Very limited in coverage, very limited as kind of an athlete, especially at this point in his career entering his 30s. However, for a backup linebacker, any statistic or any player that can put up these kinds of numbers in a starting role is good enough to be a linebacker in the NFL, and in particular, good enough to be a backup linebacker in Detroit. Now, why did the Detroit Lions sign said linebacker? Well, as good and as deep as their linebacking core may look on paper, it could get thin very quickly. As we saw a season ago, the Lions were down to their final starters a year ago. Guys starting with Ezekiel Turner and so many linebackers that had no means of being on a 15-2 football team. Jamal Adams started 2 games at linebacker for the Detroit Lions. That's how desperate they were. And it got really thin very quick. Alex Anzalone should return next season, but of course with the concerns of him potentially holding out, as well as him coming off of a fractured forearm, there is a little bit of concern there. Jack Campbell, of course, is your former first-round pick, a fantastic linebacker who just passed 100 tackles a season ago, really kept the defense together from the interior, and there was a couple games, particularly against the Packers in Week 11 and the week following, where he was the only starter from that front 7. It was him, and then they were playing guys like Miles Adams and Broderick Martin and Al-Qaeda Muhammad and Josh Paschal and Ezekiel Turner and Jamal Adams alongside him. And the front 7 was just Jack Campbell and nobody else. Derek Barnes is coming off of an MCL tear, and while he should be okay to play the season, just got a contract to really solidify and kind of hammer that point home. He is still coming off of a major injury, as is Malcolm Rodriguez, coming off an ACL tear and may not be ready for the first week of the NFL season. Grant Stewart is a brand new face to a brand new locker room with a brand new linebackers coach, and Anthony Pittman is, while being a good special teamer, not really the guy you want to rely on as a starting linebacker on defense. So you signed Zach Cunningham, a valued player that could potentially slide in as the Lions linebacker 6 or 7 on the roster. He's certainly not going to start over Alex Anzalone, Jack Campbell, or Derek Barnes. I don't think he'll see time over Malcolm Rodriguez or even Grant Stewart. I think Grant Stewart has a little bit more juice left in the tank and a little bit more coverage ability, a bit more versatility to his game. But Zach Cunningham could certainly be a practice squad player. He could certainly beat out Anthony Pittman for a spot. And to be the linebacker 6, to be the linebacker 7, I see no reason that this couldn't be a good move for Detroit. Starting experience, veteran leadership, good bottom of the depth chart type of talent. And as we talked about in another video, that's kind of where the Lions have been this offseason. They haven't made the big splash for Josh Sweat. They didn't make a big signing for Milton Williams. They didn't make a big trade for Trey Hendrickson, but they've really been filling out the bottom of their roster with good foundational pieces. Rock Ya-Sin, Avonte Maddox, Roy Lopez, and so many other just good quality players throughout the depth chart that in a good season and even for a decent, semi below average NFL team, those are starters. Roy Lopez started games last year for the Arizona Cardinals, and now he's their defensive tackle 6, right? Avonte Maddox started 8 games for the Eagles this season ago and started a lot of games for the Philadelphia Eagles over the last couple of years. He's the cornerback 6. Rock Ya-Sin started 13 games just 2 seasons ago. He's the cornerback 7, right? You now have Zach Cunningham in the linebacking core, a player with several starts under his career, multiple seasons of starting every single game for an NFL team, and a good NFL team at that. Houston made the playoffs a number of times with Zach Cunningham and a couple of times when he was on the Texans and the Titans as well. And this is just a good move by Brad Holmes. This is filling out the bottom of the depth chart, making sure what happens last year doesn't happen again. And I'm all for it. I think it's a good move. It's not a very expensive move, and it makes sure that the Detroit Lions don't have to start practice squad players again. And make sure they don't have to start guys like Ezekiel Turner. They don't have to start guys like Jamal Adams. They don't have to start players that were signed 10 days ago, like Quan Alexander, to play in a primetime football game because you just don't have enough bodies to do it. I think this is a good signing. Am I going to blow it out of proportion and say it's an A-plus signing of the offseason? No. Is it a steal of the summer? Maybe, probably not. But I think it's a good move. I think it's hard to hate on this move. And particularly this late into the offseason, you're not going to get a whole lot more talent for the player. So with that being said, I think it's a good player. A bit of a shorter video today. Sorry, that might be the norm for a little while. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Let me know down in the comments below your opinions on a player like Zach Cunningham. I'd love to hear down in the comments below. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.